This is our 93rd sequel of the Church of Uganda at 150 years, a celebration of our church and indeed a celebration of our state. Today we unusually go and visit the Baganda, and in this particular sequel we are celebrating the wisdom of their ancient calendar, and by extension the rest of humanity and how we developed our various calendars. The Baganda call one day Enzingu, so that is between sunrise and sunset. A week, they used to call it Dimansi. A month, they used to call it Zola. And a year, which was a period composed of 10 seasons, was called Daza. The first Muganda month season was when grasshoppers began to appear because of the heavy rains. And immediately they began to appear. Then that season began, and the season was called Musenene. Then there was a very long period after the rains, and it began with a moth or an insect called Entemvu. And that particular month or insect declared or was a symbol of a coming dry spell. And therefore this very long season of the dry spell was given the name, or simply named after that particular month or insect, Ntemvu. So Ntemvu became the second season, and it was a very long season. It was so long that it was characterized by banana plantations falling off from their plantains. It may not have necessarily been bananas. It could have been any other kind of foods. And because of the season being so dry, they would fall off after ripening. They simply begin to fall off. And then this very long season will end up with the entire vegetation so dry. And immediately that ended, that season would end. All of it called Ntemvu. Now, in terms of today, that season was as long as 90 days. Then there were signs that the period of the dry spell was coming to an end. And that sign was when those banana leaves or plantain leaves began to dry off. So after that season, they would then begin to prepare for planting. And they would plant seeds or they would plant seedlings. And that particular season was a little bit shorter, and it was called Mugulansigo. It was then followed by an ant and a flying ant. When that flying ant appeared, it announced that the heavy rains were on their way. And indeed, the heavy rains would not disappoint. So in that season of that edible flying ant, that season was called Kafurumampao, and it was the 4th season. Then the rains would begin, and that would be in the 5th season, and that it was a lot of rain, and it was named Muzigo. then the sixth season will begin. And this is when harvesting will begin also. Bumper harvest. Unfortunately, in those days, there was a crop which would be very similar to the maize corn crop, and it caused or it attracted mosquitoes, a unique kind of mosquitoes. And these kind of mosquitoes carried a bacteria, and the bacteria caused a fever which led to death. Definitely this was a kind of a fever. It would mostly kill dormant people, and culprits were basically men. They would die after becoming so weak and lying on the ground, therefore facing upwards. And when they died, their mouths will be open and their teeth stuck together. It would appear as if, because the mouth was open and the teeth was being seen, it would appear as if the person lying on the ground was actually laughing, when in fact that person was dead. Now that bumper maize harvest and the crops that caused the mosquito which caused that fever, the season was called Seva Seka. It was followed by the seventh season, another field preparation season called Kasambra. They would clear, because of the heavy rains and the bumper harvest, there will be a lot of bushes to clear. So the bush clearing season was called Kasambra, clearance of bushes. That was the seventh season. Then the eighth season, there was a lot of thunder and lightning, and yet with no rain. So this thunder and lightning that ended up without rain became a season that they noted. And according to the Bagandas of that time, they believed that the gods of the clouds were fighting each time that season began, and they named it Muwakanya. According to them, the crowds were divided into male crowds and female crowds. The male crowds were called Dumbi, the female crowds were called Togo, and they would fight each year, and therefore the season was called Muwakanya. The ninth season was a season of another type of edible ants that came out of antihills after the rain had begun, and they would come in the evening. So the season was called Mutunda. The 10th season, which closed off the year, was called Mukurukusa Bitungotungo. And this was because the rains had begun, and the rains affected the seedlings or the seeds that had been planted, and some of it would be eroded by the rain, and then those seedlings or seeds would grow again in the periphery of the fields. And so the season was called Mukurukusa Bitungotungo. And therefore the ancient Muganda year of 10 seasons came to an end. As you can see, those seasons were not basically lunar. They were not always lunar. Some of them really belong to whatever was happening in that particular season, like that dry spell season we saw of almost 90 days. So how did this change then, and when? Well, in 1844, the Arabs came to Africa, to Baganda for the first time, and they introduced a 12-month calendar of the Persians. However, they were quick to say that because of the Portuguese conquering of Eastern Africa, and later the British, they had come with their own calendar, which was called Gregorian, and that for some reason was taking over. But they also mentioned that it was 12 months, just like their own Persian or Islamic calendar. And so the Baganda, being who they are, began slowly to align their own calendar, to align it with the Gregorian which the Arabs had brought. Especially this very long spell is where they discovered that the first month, according to the Gregorian calendar, happened within a short period after the month that marked the coming of the dry spell. The moment that particular season of the month ended, that is where the Gregorian calendar seemed to start. And therefore, they shifted their first month of the year from the grasshopper appearance, which was Musenene, being the first month, and they extended the beginning of the Baganda year now to the season when the banana plantains or any other plantains will be ripening and falling off because of the dry spell. That season, they named it Gatonya, and Gatonya became the first month of the Baganda. You can see there was a transition from the ancient to the modern calendar. The Muganda proving that he was a modern person, moving with the trends of the rest of the world. Now, within the dry spell, they recognized the month to be the very last of the year, and therefore the falling off of the plantains to be the first of the year. So they are breaking up the 90-day season into almost 3 months, because they also named the other one as Mukutula Sanja, the one where the leaves began to fall off because of the very dry conditions. So that particular season became shorter, and it was named Mukutula Sanja. So the 90 period retained its big size, but broken up into 3. The Ntemvu, which was the original name, the month. Then the Gatonya became the first month, Mukutula Sanja the second month, and therefore the third month remained Mugulansigo. The fourth month remained Kafulumampau. The fifth month remained Muzigo. The sixth month remained Sebasega. The seventh month remained Kasambula. The eighth month remained Muwakanya. The ninth month remained Mutunda. The 10th month, which used to be the last season, remained Mukurukusa Bitungo. But now an 11th season was introduced. The former first month, Musenene, the becoming of the grasshoppers, was now recognized as the 11th month. And the month to close the year became Ntemvu, which originally was the second month and was a 90 days period month, now became a shorter period of a lunar season. Lunar meaning from one moon to the other, and retained the name Ntemvu, the name named after that month. So the Baganda year all of a sudden changed into 12 months and became aligned with the Gregorian month. In the next sequel, we will align that with civilization, and again thank God for the wisdom of the Baganda people when they aligned their calendar, only to realize that they had done so not only to align it with the Gregorian, but also in recognition of their own ancestry and the fact that there was a bigger picture of the calendar framework and as far as the world was concerned. May the good Lord bless us all.